I'm Nancy Harper, 34, and I've always been the invisible one in my family. Last Wednesday, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw a post about my sister's engagement party. My heart sank. I wasn't invited. I called my parents expecting an explanation, but my dad just said, "It's just a get-together, honey. A get-together." My entire family was there. Parents, cousins, but not me. The sting of being left out hit hard like a punch I didn't see coming. I confronted my sister, but she brushed it off, saying I was too busy anyway. That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. By Friday, I booked a flight to Aspen, Colorado, craving escape. I posted a photo of the Rockies on Instagram, knowing they'd see it. Hours later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing, missed calls, texts, panic from everyone. They realized I was gone, but I wasn't ready to talk. What happened next changed everything, and I'll never see my family the same way again. Stick around to find out why. Have you ever been left out by your family? Drop your story in the comments and hit that subscribe button to see how I took back control. Growing up in Lincoln, Nebraska, I was always on the sidelines of my family. I'm Nancy Harper and my sister Ellen Harper. 5 years younger was my parents' everything. My parents, Lawrence and Shirley Harper, made their favoritism clear. When I was 10, I won a math competition, my first trophy gleaming in my hands. I thought Mom and Dad would finally notice me. Mom said, "That's nice," and turned to frame Ellen's finger painting. Dad took Ellen for ice cream, calling her his little artist. I hid my trophy in a drawer, my pride crushed. But Grandpa Milton saw me. He slipped me a worn copy of Charlotte's Web and whispered, "You're sharp, Nancy. Don't let anyone dim your light." His words were my anchor, the only time I felt seen. By 16, the pattern was unbreakable. For my birthday, I got a card with $10 inside, while Ellen at 11 got a new bike with a shiny bow. I started working at a diner after school, saving for college, knowing I'd get no help. Ellen got new clothes every season, no questions asked. Mom said Ellen needed more guidance, and Dad called her his dreamer. I stayed silent, earning a scholarship to the University of Nebraska for finance. Grandpa Milton was my lifeline. He'd call every Sunday asking about my classes, sharing stories of his bookkeeping days. "You've got my head for numbers," he'd say, his voice warm. No one else bothered to check in. At 20, in my sophomore year, I hit a breaking point. I was working 2 jobs, waitressing and tutoring, to cover rent and books. I asked Dad for a small loan after my car broke down. He said they were too tight because they'd just paid for Ellen's summer trip to Chicago for a marketing workshop. I took on extra shifts, exhausted. Ellen called me that year asking for help with her college applications. I stayed up nights editing her essays, driving her to interviews. She got into her top school but never said thanks. I told Grandpa Milton, expecting him to shrug it off. Instead, he sent me a silver locket with a note. "For my strongest girl." I clung to that locket, a reminder someone cared. Then, at 21, Grandpa Milton got sick. His heart was failing, and I'd visit him in the hospital, sitting by his bed, reading him my finance textbooks. He'd smile, weak but proud, saying, "You'll outshine them all, Nancy." When he passed away that spring, it felt like my world cracked open. I lost the only person who saw me, who believed in me. At his funeral, Mom and Dad focused on Ellen, comforting her as she sobbed. I stood alone, clutching his locket, my grief invisible. After that, I stopped expecting anything from my family. I graduated, built a career as a financial analyst, and bought a condo in Lincoln by 34. I invited Mom and Dad to see it, hoping for a flicker of pride. They came, but Dad talked about Ellen's new marketing job, and Mom asked if I could help with Ellen's wedding budget to Paul Myers. Ellen wasn't cruel, just clueless. She'd borrow my car without asking, call me to fix her finances, then forget I existed. Last Christmas, I spent hours balancing her wedding expenses. She promised coffee as thanks, but ditched me for a work event. Mom said Ellen's just busy, you know. I knotted the locket heavy around my neck. Without Grandpa Milton, I had no one to turn to. His absence made their neglect sharper like a wound that never healed. Mom and Dad poured their love into Ellen, her dreams, her engagement, her life. I'd try to share my wins, a promotion, a big client, but Mom would pivot to Ellen's latest project. Dad would say Ellen's got such a spark. I stopped trying. Grandpa Milton's words echoed in my head. Don't let anyone dim your light. But without him, I felt my light fading, buried under years of being invisible to my family. Everything fell apart on a Wednesday afternoon at the office. I was on a break scrolling through Instagram when a post from my cousin Bonnie Harper stopped me cold. It showed a backyard lit with fairy lights, champagne glasses raised, and my sister beaming beside Paul Myers, her fiancé. The caption read, "To Ellen and Paul's engagement, best night ever." My heart sank. I wasn't invited. My family, mom, dad, cousins was there celebrating Ellen's moment. The exclusion hit like a blade sharper because Grandpa Milton, the only one who ever saw me, wasn't there to soften it. He'd been gone since I was 21, and their betrayal felt like losing him again. I called my parents, hands shaking. Dad answered with a casual, "Hey honey," I didn't hold back. Why wasn't I invited to Ellen's engagement party? Silence stretched, then he chuckled. It's just a small get-together, Nancy. You're always so busy with work. A small get-together with a caterer and photographer? I pressed voice tight. You didn't even tell me it was happening. Mom joined on speaker. We didn't want to bother you, sweetheart. She said, her tone too gentle, like I was overreacting. Their excuses stung worse than the absence. They hadn't forgotten me, they'd chosen to leave me out. I hung up, gripping the locket Grandpa Milton gave me, its cool metal grounding me. I could almost hear him say, "Don't let anyone dim your light." But their dismissal drowned it out. I dialed Ellen next. She answered, all cheer. "Nancy, what's up?" I kept it direct. "Why didn't you invite me to your engagement party?" Her tone turned sharp. "Oh, come on, Nancy, don't make a big deal out of it. It was just a small thing and you're always swamped with work." I snapped small. "The whole family was there, Ellen. I saw the photos." She sighed, exasperated. "You're so dramatic, Nancy. You don't need to be at every event. You're so independent." Independent, I'd spent hours fixing her wedding budget, stayed up late for her calls, and she thought I wouldn't care. I asked if she even wanted me there. "We figured you'd be too busy," she said, dismissive. I ended the call, my chest burning. I thought of Grandpa Milton, how he'd sit with me reading stories, seeing me when no one else did. I sat at my desk, the office noise fading. I reopened Instagram, staring at Bonnie's post. Ellen's smile, Paul's arm around her mom and dad toasting it, was a world I didn't belong to. I remembered Grandpa Milton's laugh, his hand on my shoulder telling me I was enough. He'd died when I was 21, leaving me with no one to turn to. I texted Bonnie, desperate for answers. "Why didn't anyone tell me about the party?" Her reply was flippant. "I thought Ellen invited you." It was last minute. Last minute. The photos screamed planning. I didn't respond. The hurt wasn't just the party. It was every time Mom and Dad chose Ellen, every time she brushed me off. I'd built a life, my career, my condo, but they never saw it. That Wednesday, I hit my limit. I couldn't keep pretending their neglect didn't break me. By Friday, I couldn't take it anymore and booked a trip to Aspen. The sting of Wednesday's discovery, Ellen's engagement party, I wasn't invited to, my family's betrayal, drove me to escape Lincoln. I booked a last-minute flight and rented a cabin in the Rockies, craving solitude. I packed light, slipping Grandpa Milton's locket into my pocket, a quiet reminder of his belief in me. His words, "Don't let anyone dim your light," pushed me forward as I boarded the plane. This wasn't about their approval. This was for me. Aspen was crisp and quiet when I arrived Friday night. The cabin sat among pines, its windows framing jagged peaks. I stood on the porch, the silence washing over me. For years, I'd carried Mom and Dad's favoritism, Ellen's dismissals, but here I felt a spark of freedom. I could be Nancy Harper, not the sister or daughter they overlooked. On Saturday, I hiked a trail near Maroon Bells, the mountains sharp against the sky. I met Nathan Brooks, a climber with a calm smile, sketching by a stream. We talked first about the trails, then about my family's exclusion. "Sounds like you're carrying their weight," he said. "Maybe it's time to let it go." His words echoed Grandpa Milton's advice to live for myself, loosening a knot in my chest. By Monday, I wandered into Aspen's town, browsing a local market alive with the scent of fresh bread. At a diner on Main Street, I met Margaret Olson, the owner, a woman with a warm laugh and steady gaze. I shared my story over coffee, the party my parents' excuses, Ellen's indifference. Margaret nodded, wiping the counter. "I left my family's expectations behind years ago," she said. "Built this place instead. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival." Her words hit deep, reminding me of Grandpa Milton's lessons about standing tall. I bought a leather journal at a craft fair that afternoon, scribbling thoughts about who I could be without their validation. On Tuesday, I posted a photo of the Rockies at dawn on Instagram, captioned, "Chasing my own light." It was deliberate. I wanted Mom, Dad, Ellen to see I was thriving without them. The next day, my phone buzzed with a notification: Ellen's public post. A photo with Paul Myers captioned, "Family means everything, but some choose to make us look bad with their solo stunts." The words burned. She meant me, twisting my trip into an attack. I wanted to call her to demand why she'd paint me as the villain. But I stopped, remembering Grandpa Milton's voice urging me to be enough on my own. Her post was her guilt, not my shame. I didn't respond. By Thursday, I was back at Margaret's diner, writing in my journal. She refilled my coffee, smiling. "You look stronger," she said. I told her about Ellen's post, how I'd chosen silence. "Good," she said. "You're choosing yourself." I wrote, "My worth is mine." It felt like a vow. I thought of Grandpa Milton, how he'd sit with me as a kid, telling me I could be anything. I didn't need Mom, Dad, or Ellen to see me. His belief was enough. Aspen had shown me a new path, not running from my family, but building a life where their neglect couldn't touch me. As I walked through Aspen's glowing streets that evening, I felt a clarity I'd never known. The pain, Ellen's accusation, Mom and Dad's silence didn't define me. Nathan's advice, Margaret's strength, Grandpa Milton's lessons, they showed me my value was mine to claim. I'd spent years chasing their approval, but here I saw it. My worth didn't depend on them. I was done living in their shadow. I was ready to live for myself, to build a life on my own terms. By Saturday, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I was still in Aspen, sitting in a quiet cafe, the taste of black coffee grounding me after a week of carving out my own space. My Instagram post, "Chasing My Own Light," had just spread by my family in Lincoln, and they were in a frenzy. Notifications lit up my screen, messages from Mom, Dad, Ellen. The same family that excluded me from Ellen's engagement party now wanted my attention. I opened my phone, scanning their words, each one dripping with panic, not remorse. Dad Lawrence Harper texted first. "Nancy, this post is out of line. Call us now." Mom Shirley Harper sent a softer plea. "We're worried, sweetheart. Let's talk." Ellen's message cut deep. "Your stunt is embarrassing us. Stop it." Their urgency wasn't about me, it was about their image. They hadn't cared when they left me out of the party, but my public claim to freedom had them scrambling. I thought of Grandpa Milton, how he'd urged me as a kid to live my truth. His words steadied me as I read their demands. My phone rang. Bonnie Harper, my cousin. I picked up, bracing for her usual lightness, but her voice was tight. "Nancy, it's chaos here," she said. "Ellen's post about you making the family look bad backfired. People are commenting, saying she was wrong to exclude you. She and Paul Myers are fighting over it." I leaned back, processing. Ellen's attack on me had sparked a public debate, and Paul wasn't happy with the scrutiny. Bonnie hesitated, then added, "She's blaming you, but it's her mess." I nodded, though she couldn't see. Ellen's drama wasn't mine to fix. I scrolled through the messages again. Dad's tone grew sharper. This is humiliating, Nancy. Fix it. Mom tried guilt. We just want our family back together. Ellen sent another, "You're being selfish, stirring up trouble." Selfish? I'd spent years cleaning up their messes. Ellen's budgets, Mom's excuses, Dad's favoritism. Now my one post had them rattled. I could hear Grandpa Milton's voice telling me to stand tall, not bend to their expectations. I set the phone down, letting their words sit unanswered. I didn't owe them a response. At the cafe, I pulled out my journal, jotting down ideas for my life back in Lincoln, a new project, maybe a move. Bonnie's call replayed in my mind. Ellen's fight with Paul, the comments tearing into her post, it was their storm, not mine. I'd always been the one to smooth things over to keep the peace. But in Aspen, I saw no point. Grandpa Milton had taught me I didn't need their approval to be enough. I sipped my coffee, ignoring another buzz from my phone. Their panic wasn't my burden. Later, I walked through Aspen streets, the air cool and sharp. My phone kept buzzing, more messages from Dad, Mom, Ellen. I glanced at them, Dad demanding, Mom pleading, Ellen accusing. I didn't open the new ones. Each ignored text felt like a step forward. I stopped at a bookstore, picking up a planner to map out my next months. I wasn't the sister who fixed everything, or the daughter who stayed quiet. Grandpa Milton's lessons, not their demands, guided me now. I didn't need to prove myself to them. Back at the cabin, I sat with my planner, sketching out goals, work projects, maybe a trip somewhere new. The buzzing phone lay face down. Ellen's accusations, Mom and Dad's pleas, they were noise, not truth. I'd spent too long trying to fit their mold. Bonnie's call had shown me their chaos was self-inflicted. I wrote in my journal, my life, my rules. I wasn't running from them anymore. I silenced my phone and planned my next steps. When I returned to Lincoln, my family was waiting. It was Monday, and I'd just gotten back from Aspen when Mom called, insisting I come to their house. I drove over the streets of Lincoln, feeling narrower, like they were trying to pull me back. I braced myself for their accusations, Grandpa Milton's words, "Live your truth," steadying me as I parked outside their home. In the living room, Dad stood with his arms crossed, face hard. Mom sat stiffly on the couch, her lips tight. Ellen leaned against the doorway, eyes sharp. There was no warmth, only blame. Dad spoke first, his voice cutting. "Your Instagram post shamed us, Nancy. The whole town's talking." Mom's tone was cold, disappointed. "We raised you better than to air family business like this." I gripped my keys. They weren't sorry for leaving me out of Ellen's engagement party. They were angry I'd stepped out of their shadow. Ellen glared, her words sharp. "You're so selfish, Nancy, stirring up drama for attention." I didn't back down. "Selfish," I said. "You excluded me from your engagement party, Ellen. You posted about me ruining the family. And I'm the problem." She smirked. "It was one event. Stop overreacting." One event. Years of their neglect, favoring Ellen, dismissing me, surged in my mind. Grandpa Milton's voice telling me I was enough kept me steady. I wasn't here to absorb their blame. Dad jabbed a finger at me. "You've humiliated us, Nancy. Fix this." Mom nodded. "You owe us better than this public stunt." Their words were meant to cage me, to make me small again. They didn't care about my pain, only their image. "I don't owe you anything," I said, voice firm. "You lied to me, left me out, and now you're blaming me for living my life." Ellen rolled her eyes. Always playing the victim. I faced her. "No, Ellen. I'm just done being yours." I turned for the door, bag in hand. Dad's voice rose. "You're just walking away." I looked back, calm. "I'm done with your blame." Mom stood, her face tight. "You're choosing to break this family." But I was choosing myself. Grandpa Milton had taught me to stand tall, not shrink for them. I stepped outside, their accusations fading behind the closed door. I didn't glance back. Back at my condo, I rearranged the living room, new shelves, a rug I'd picked out. My phone buzzed Ellen's text, "You're pathetic." Mom's followed, "You've hurt us, Nancy." I ignored them. Their words couldn't touch me anymore. I set up a vision board on my wall, pinning ideas for a work project I was pitching. Grandpa Milton's lessons, "Be true to yourself," drove every move. I wasn't running from them. I was shaping my space. The next morning, I met a coworker at a coffee shop to refine my project pitch, one I'd been overlooked for before. My phone stayed quiet, no new messages from them. Their absence didn't pull me back. I'd spent years chasing their respect, but their reaction today proved they'd never see me. They wanted me to stay quiet, carry their guilt. I finished my coffee, packed my notes, and stepped into Lincoln's streets. Their blame was theirs to keep. I left their house, ready to live my way. 1 month later, I threw my first birthday party without my family. It was Wednesday, my 35th birthday, and I'd spent the days leading up to it building a life free of their shadow. At work, I'd secured a marketing campaign, I'd pitched one I'd been overlooked for before. I spent mornings in my Lincoln condo sketching ideas, pinning goals to a vision board above my desk. I'd added shelves and a rug to my living room, making the space mine. My days were full: work plans for a weekend hike, visits from Lori Jensen, my closest friend, who brought coffee, and her terrible puns. Last week, my cousin Bonnie Harper called with updates. Ellen's Instagram post calling me out for making the family look bad had backfired. Public comments tore into her for excluding me from her engagement party, and Paul Myers, her fiancé, grew distant. Bonnie said Ellen postponed the wedding, citing family stress. Paul skipped recent Harper gatherings, fed up with their chaos. Ellen's attempt to paint me as the villain had cost her. I didn't dwell on it. Her consequences weren't my burden. Dad Lawrence Harper and Mom Shirley Harper had faded from my life. Bonnie mentioned they'd asked about me, but no calls or texts came. I didn't invite them to my birthday, nor would I to future milestones. Their favoritism and blame had built a wall I no longer tried to scale. Letting them go wasn't loss, it was freedom. I'd learned to value myself without their validation, to build a life on my own terms. That evening, my condo glowed with string lights as the party began. Lori Jensen helped me set up a playlist, a homemade cake, new cushions on my couch. The absence of Dad, Mom, and Ellen didn't sting. I'd carved out a space that didn't need them to feel whole. Lori poured wine, grinning. "This place is all you, Nancy. No family drama allowed." I clinked my glass against hers, laughing. The party was small: coworkers, a neighbor, Lori, but it felt right. We danced to the playlist, shared stories over cake, and laughed under the soft glow. I didn't check my phone for messages from my family. They hadn't reached out since our confrontation, and I hadn't invited them. Their silence was their choice, just as this night was mine. As the night wound down, guests lingered, swapping final stories. Lori and I cleared plates, her hug warm and tight. "You're unstoppable, Nancy. Happy birthday." I smiled, stacking dishes. This night wasn't about proving anything to Dad, Mom, or Ellen. It was about living for myself. I'd learned self-respect meant drawing lines, even if it cost me ties with them. Their absence didn't define me. My choices did. I touched the locket Grandpa Milton gave me, a reminder of my worth. His belief in me anchored my resolve to keep moving forward. After everyone left, I locked up, checking my phone. No texts from my family, only birthday wishes from friends. I'd built a life free of their blame. Ellen's postponed wedding, Dad and Mom's isolation, they were reaping what they'd sown. I'd chosen to honor my worth, to walk away. Self-respect wasn't just standing up, it was letting go. I raised a glass alone, my future mine to shape. To everyone who's followed my story, thank you for listening. I've learned that setting boundaries can hurt, but it's how we honor our worth. What's your story? Have you ever chosen yourself over family? Share your thoughts below, I'd love to hear them. And if this resonated, please subscribe to my channel for more. Your support means everything.